back for part 3 with Tom Stokes again, still on Reading. So last episode went into detail about Dorchester Lake and your captures there. So I think this one we do a little bit about Pingewood. You did say it's probably not going to be as in depth, but we'll just see where it goes. See what you can remember.
Sounds good, mate.
Talk to us about that when you first sort of heard about it, maybe.
Yeah, so Pingewood. Now I'd known about Pingewood for quite a long time. In fact, I'd known about Pingewood before I fished Dorchester. I'd actually, as I say, before we fished Dorchester, I was at a bit of a loose end as to where I was going to go next, and I'd heard bits about this Pingewood. I knew it was a club water down in Reading, but it was a long way for me at the time. It was 120 miles, a bit further than the lakes I'd fished in Oxford, and I did actually buy the club permit just for the days, but just so I could go and walk around, etc. But I never bought the night ticket and never actually did a night. As I say, Dorchester came along and it sort of got forgotten about until my mate Tom, the following year, I was like, I'm going to go and fish Pingewood, which sort of left me on to fish Dorchester. As I said in the previous one, at first I was a bit, I wasn't too sure about that, but in hindsight, it worked out well for both of us. Yeah. I'd had a great year on Dorchester. He'd had a great year on Pinge, caught a few, including the Brute. He actually caught the Brute the same morning that I caught the Big Lin. So we've been two mates that we'd separated, that spring. For the first time, we've separated and gone our separate ways. He's gone Pingewood, I've gone Dorchester. We both caught the bloody one we were after on the same morning.
That is weird.
Literally, I can remember I had the Big Lin in the net from Dorchester. I'd been trying to ring Tom, text him in the early hours, no answer. 5:30 in the morning, my phone's gone, it's Tom. I've answered the phone, because I texted him saying, I've got it, it's in the net, and I'm expecting him to answer the phone and go, fucking fair play, mate. And he's like, I've answered the phone. I was like, mate. He's like, yeah, I've got the fucking Brute. He hadn't even looked at the text messages. And I was like, mate, I've got the Big Lin. So anyway, in fact, they actually photographed the Brute, and he photographed the Brute at first light, and then, bless him, he jumped straight in his van and drove up to Oxford and photographed Big Lin with me as well. So that was a bit mad.
Was that a moon phase, do you think, looking back or something, or just a weird coincidence?
I can't remember. It was that far back, and to be honest, I paid no attention to the moon phases back then, really. Yeah. I mean, I don't really know. Yeah. I'll be honest. I fish weekends, and I'm fishing every weekend, whether it's full moon, new moon, or whatever moon. If it's a full moon, happy day. If it's a new moon, happy days. Don't get me wrong. I do think there is something in it, but I can't remember. I don't worry about moon phases too much.
Yeah.
I just fish as much as I can, whether it's moon or not. So Tom's caught the Brute. So obviously now I've done really well on Dorchester, caught the majority of them, and it just seemed the obvious place for me to go. Tom went on to Burfield and did in the next season on Burfield, so I thought, right, I'm going to have a go on Pinge. And now Pinge was, again, a massive step up and a massive eye-opener to me, because this was a circuit water. This was super busy. The Brute had actually been caught at £54 the previous autumn.
And what year was this, Tom?
I'm terrible with dates.
10, 11?
Yeah, about 11 this was.
Right.
It had come out in the autumn 11. I might be wrong, so if anyone's listening to this and thinking, no, it was 12, it was 10, sorry, but I think it was 11. So I'm sure it was 2011, the autumn of 2011, a chap called Punks had caught it at £54.
Wow.
As I say, Tom had caught it that summer as well, but because of the size of the fish, the publicity the lake was getting, that spring that I joined was busy, and as I say, it was a bit of a shock to the system for me. And at the same time, I ain't gonna lie, it was a bit nerve-wracking. You got a lot of names on there. I can remember Nigel's fishing. I mean, Nigel's a mate now, but at the time it was like, fucking hell, Nigel Sharp's here, Jesus Christ, I'm just some kid from the Midlands, Anyway, I went on there and, it was busy. I was turning up late on a Friday or a Thursday at best and just sort of slotting in. And for the first couple of weeks, not a lot happened. But I can actually remember my first bite came. One Friday, I turned up and the lake was flipping rammed. There was literally 2 swims free, and that was Pearly and Middle Pearly, which are two swims on the motorway bank, not really They're not bad swims in hindsight. I actually caught a few good ones from them swims, but they're not massively popular choices. There was a freezing cold spring northeasterly wind smashing into them 2 swims. No wonder no one wanted to go in there. It felt bloody Baltic. Bird. Felt Baltic on the end of that wind, and I just thought, this ain't the one, literally the rest of the lake was stitched. So I thought, the same ticket covered a few lakes, so I thought I'll go and have a look around Farnham Flint down the road. I thought I'm just going to do a night on there. Went and had a look around Flint, that was pretty busy as well, so in the end I thought, fuck it, I'm going to go back and just fish one of them 2 swims. At least it's on the lake that I plan to fish. And I can remember, I've dropped my barrow behind the one swim. I'm just sort of oohing and ahhing between the 2 swims, which one I was going to fish. They both just looked equally as shit, to be honest. Like, absolutely penned in, people opposite, left, right, cold wind smashing in. So I've got the marker rod off the barrow, and just as I'm about to take the first cast, one has literally slid out to the wrist of the tail, 2 rod lengths out in front of me. I thought, I'll put that marker rod away now. I can remember I flicked 3 hinges for drops. I chucked them well beyond where these fish had shoved out, chucked them well beyond, skinned them back across the surface, and just lowered these 3 hinges for drops in the general vicinity of where this fish had showed. I thought, bloody hell, now I'm fishing like. Started getting my bivvy up and that. 10 minutes later, middle rod was away. And that turned out to be a fish called the baby plated. Not a massive fish. It was about 23 pound, I think. But an absolutely mega looking one. And it was my first one out the lake. My first, there had been a lot. I'd read a lot that had been written on Pingewood, and the general consensus was this lake was rock hard. Fish by the best. It's rock hard.
Or was the stock at the time?
About 40 fish.
Right.
I think there was.
What size was it? For those who don't know.
About 16 acres. I don't actually know, but about 16 or 17 acres. Again, right. I might be wrong. There's probably might be people thinking, no, it's bigger than that. No, it's smaller than that. But I guessed about 16 acres or something. And there's about 40 fish. 18 mirrors. 18 mirrors, and the rest were commons, a few snub noses and that. The biggest common was one called Nathan's, but I won't go into detail about all the mirrors, but I can remember there was 18 of them left at the time. Right. Brute obviously being the biggest. And as I say, I'd heard a lot of stuff about Pingewood, how hard it could be, so you just catch, I was chuffed, Plus the lake was rammed. I dropped into the last bloody swim free pretty much. It looked so unfavourable, I'd have never chose to go in there anyway, and I've got one. Happy days, I'm off to a flyer. Next couple of weeks again passed away. Like by now the spring's in full swing. That was like mid-April, and like the lake was just busy, mate. I was getting there on the front. By the time I've left work, 4 or 5 o'clock, drove down there and got there. I'm one of the last there every week. But this was a couple of trips after that baby plated capture. This trip was to teach me that wasn't always a bad thing. The baby plated capture had already sort of proved this to me, but I hadn't realised it yet. I've turned up there again on the Friday. In fact, it was Thursday this week. I thought, right, I'm getting there Thursday night. I need to get an half-decent swim. There was a massive southwesterly forecast for that weekend. The first big southwesterly of the spring, low pressure. I need to get down there, get in good position. Got down there Thursday afternoon. Lo and behold, fucking rammed. Absolutely rammed. I was like, oh my God. Everywhere that the southwesterly remotely blew anywhere near, all along the cottage blank, all the way around by Nettles, Ladders, Slipway, Lawn, all stitched. Everywhere was stitched. The only end of the lake that was free was like First Point, and that which was at the gravel workings and on the absolute square slap bang back of the southwesterly, as far away from where the wind blew as you could possibly get. Everybody had obviously gone down there with the exact same idea. Oh, I'm going to go down there and get somewhere on the end of this wind. Even though it was Thursday, I had no hope. I can remember being a bit disheartened again, thinking, for fuck's sake, this is a joke, like
what have I got to do, sort of scenario. Yeah.
But I dropped on First Point anyway. I can remember my mate Tom had caught a couple off First Point the previous spring, so although I hadn't seen anything there and the wind was blowing the other way, it'll do. It'll do for the night. Got the rods out, and I can remember first light in the morning, I had a bite on the middle rod, which on like a little gravelly patch that I'd found about 40-50 yards out. Got it in the net, and it was one they called the Lung Common. It's just under £29, I think, 28 and a half, something like that. Mega looking fish, nice Lung Common. Absolutely buzzing. I can remember ringing my mate Tom, yeah, I've got another one, mate, fucking £28 common. He was fishing a lake down the road. He's like, yeah, I'll come down and do the pictures for you, I'm going to reel in a bit. And yeah. So I've put the phone down. Now, one other fish, the brute was the main target in this lake, without doubt, obviously. But the other fish that really, really stood out to me, that I can always remember seeing the picture of Terry Owen with it years and years before, was one they called the crop-tail linear. And this was, not only was it an absolutely mega linear, the fact that, I always had this image of Terry Owen holding it in my head made it quite iconic to me. Funnily enough, it actually looked a lot like the bloody cut-tail linear in Dorchester that I never caught, but that's another story. But anyway, one fish, this crop-tail linear was always one that me and my mate Tom had talked about a lot, and he'd been on there the previous year, caught a few, including the brute, but not caught crop-tail. So he's on his way down to me to do the pictures. All of a sudden, I've had a bite on the left-hand rod. And I can just remember, as I'm playing it in the jinkly water, I've just caught a glimpse of it as it's rolled in front of me. And it's only bloody crop tail. This big, it was like a paley orangey colour. But it was a mega lookout, like it was pale, but mega at the same time. Anyway, I got it in the net. I just couldn't bloody believe it. Like in my mind, that was number 2 for me in that lake. I know number 2 in command as such was Big Pecks. They were the 2 18 fish, Big Pecks and Brute, should we say. They were the 2. But to me, this crop-tail linear was always such an iconic Pingewood carp. Like I say, I can always remember this image of Terry Earn holding it years and years and years ago. And here it is in my net. I mean, it's an upper 30, this fish. I think it's £37, something like that at the time.
So is that 2 sessions, 2 bites?
No. I'd had a couple of blanks.
Right.
Then I caught baby plated.
Right.
Then I think I blanked the following trip. And then I've gone down there for this 3-nighter to get on the end of the wind. Couldn't get anywhere near it. Dropped on the back of the wind. And I've had 2 bites in my first bloody morning. Everyone else had piled down the other end of the lake. And what obviously happened is the insane, intense pressure down that lake, even though the wind was pushing down there and it looked textbook conditions for that end, the fish obviously thought otherwise. And that was the first time I realised, I thought, me getting here late ain't actually a bad thing here. I'm dropping into these last swims and the bloody fish in there half the time. Anyway, so I hadn't told Tom that I got crop-tail. I can still remember it now. I was, like I say, this fish to us both was a mega. We talked about it so much. I can still remember it now. Him walking into my swim, going, "Fair play, mate, you got one, eh?" I was like, "Yeah, mate." I was like, "Have a look in that net down there." And he just walked down to the net expecting to see an upper 20 common, and there was crop-tail. He was like, "No." I was like, "Yeah." Yeah, mega, absolutely. You don't, like I say, this was years ago when we was all young. It was all new to us at the time. We were so keen and excited. Like, I'm still keen and excited now, but back then it was just so special.
Yeah.
So yeah, got crop-tail. Now, the next few weeks, the rest of the spring sort of panned out like that. Really, I caught quite a few over the next few weeks. Caught like Popeye, I caught that from the platter, the Pearly again, caught a couple of the snub-nosed commons. I actually caught crop-tail for a second time later on that spring from the lawn. I did quite well. I think that spring I had about a dozen fish.
All similar tactics as well.
Yeah, just turning up late, getting in these quieter swims, just generally flicking out rigs for drops, little pop-ups, few baits random. Being as stealthy as possible, no markering, no leading around. It all went from them first couple of captures. To be fair as well, Tom had caught a few from there, doing them similar tactics as the previous spring. He was just chucking choddies at with a few baits around. So I was just fishing for bites, basically. I was dotting around the pond, fishing for bites in these little quiet corners. And mate, I had a really enjoyable springs fishing. And into the summer, as I say, I think I had about a dozen fish, which for Pingewood was bloody good going. I just hadn't had none of the real big uns. And in hindsight, really, when it came to the brute, I never really felt that close to it. And like I say, in hindsight, I don't think I was. But at the time, it didn't matter too much. I was just happy to be there and catching.
Did the brute have sort of obviously known spots, but did it have like fish?
In the spring, it was pretty much guaranteed that it was going to come from the middle of the pond.
Right.
Motorway point, slipway or lawn. Now the lads with time were commanding them swims. I didn't have a hope of them swims, but as I say, I didn't mind at that early stage. I was just happy to be there, catching them, catching some mega carp from this lake, and I was happy. Now, as the summer wore on, my fishing got a bit more broken. I can't remember exactly why, but like I fished the spring hard. I think it was because I used most of my holiday in the spring. But as the summer wore on, I started missing the odd trip. It got a bit more broken, the fishing did. I can remember doing a trip in September in the Nettles, and I caught baby plated again. And that was my last bite of the year. So I'd had baby plated 2 times that year. It was my first bite of the year and my last bite of that first year. That was in the September. And then, no, not the Nettle, sorry, that was the Ladders, that was, where I caught baby plated from for the second time. And then I pulled off, didn't come down for a few weeks, and then I always remember I had 1 more day's holiday left, and I thought, right, I'm just going to go down there for one last trip, sort of in the autumn. It was about mid-October time, I can't remember exactly. And I've got down there on the Thursday and dropped in left-hand container. And I sort of, from what I'd gathered, I knew that wasn't a bad area for the brute, that sort of time of the year. And out in front of left-hand container, well, if you're looking from left-hand container, not straight in front because the swim sort of sits at a funny angle, sort of 45 degrees to the right, about 40 yards out, there was a bar that ran down the centre of the lake. And I put 2 rods on that bar and a bucket of Empen boilies. I can remember the second night, I started getting liners on that rod, on the 2 rods over the bucket of Empen boilies. Only little liners, but did the bobbin had just creep up a couple of inches and then just slowly creep back down and rest on the floor. And that was going on all through the night. And then, as it got light in the morning, it stopped. The second night, well, I won't get to the second night yet. That was the second night. The first night passed uneventfully, so I got there on the Thursday, put the bait out there. First night passed uneventfully. Second night, the lake was absolutely stitched by this point. As I say, that year, everyone knew the brute was likely to come out big. Every swim, I ain't even joking, mate, every swim on that lake was took that weekend. It was the full moon weekend. Going on about moon phases, I remember this was the full moon weekend. And the lake was fucking heaving. Every swim, like I say, but I'd got myself in a good position because I got there on the Thursday. Second night, I was getting these liners. And then on the Saturday day, so the lead up to my third night, the bloke who was in right container, the chap we used to refer to as Uncle Fester, he packed up in the afternoon. Now, my mate Billy, who's a local lad, he'd been fishing with his mate on a lake down the road, and he just so happened to ring me. He was like, oh, we've packed up, load of shit down here. There's a lake on the same ticket of Reading, but it's like a 20s water. He's like, oh, this crap, I'm not feeling it, it's like. And I was like, well, mate, if you're at loose end, I was like, this bloke's just packed up next to me. Come on, we'll have a social, So he was like, yeah, Sam, we'll come over there. So they come, walk down there with the barrows. This bloke literally packed up and went out of right container. Oh, my mate just moved in there. But that's what it was like. It was that busy. As I say, every swim was took. Mm-hmm. My mate Bill, I still remember now, he didn't even have any bait. He pinched a handful of boilies off me and an handful of boilies off his other mate and made 2 PVA mesh bags about golf ball size of crumb out of them, that bit of boilie. And that night we had the banter. I can remember he had 1 ounce leads on and his hooks, in my mind, were blunt as fuck. And I was winding him up and he was going, oh, you watch, I'll catch the brute on them tonight. Anyway, that night, the banter went on through the night. We've gone to bed sort of middle of the night, as you do. And I can remember I've gone to bed and these liners have started up again on my 2 rods, my right and my middle rod, on this bar over this big hit of Empen boilies. And the last liner I can remember having was about 4:30 in the morning. I can remember looking at my phone and it was like, oh, fine, anyway, I'll put the phone down. Next thing, hour later, my mate Billy's come running in the swim. Oh, I've got a big mirror in the net. Well, because of the banter the night before. I was like, oh, fuck off, you want to wind up here? And I've looked out, and he's there in his bare feet. I was like, okay, maybe he's not. Yeah. It's freezing cold, it's late October, it's foggy as fuck, complete white out. I'm thinking, he ain't winding me up here. So I've run out into his swim, looked in the net, we've sort of rolled it on its side, and there it is. The fucking brute. I tell you what, honestly, I was more excited than he was. I'd never seen this fish before on the bank. I'd fished there earlier. I hadn't seen it on the bank. I'd never seen a fish of that size. Gosh. And I was like, oh my God, it's the brute. I was like, mate, you fucking got the brute. And Yeah, mental. We got it out. It was £51. Just me and my mate Bill there at that moment, and his mate Paul, who was up the back. Oh yeah, I couldn't believe it. He got the brute. I mean, we were buzzing. I was buzzing. He was buzzing. We sacked it up. Anyway, I never had another liner after the brute was in the net. And anyway, cut long story short, once we got it out of the sack was full of hemp seed. I might be wrong, and I didn't quite realise it at the time, but as the years have passed, I've sort of realised, I'm pretty sure that brute had fed on me for 2 nights. Where Billy was casting from left container, he was casting onto the same bar, but the opposite sort of end of it, just where it went a bit siltier, sort of. I'm adamant to this day that fish had fed on me for 2 nights. It had literally drifted off me. I mean, as the fish swims, our rigs, Billy's 2 PVA bags were probably 10 yards away from my bait spot, but that's how the lake was. Yeah. Not a particularly busy lake, loads of swims, fucking rammed, and I think the brute had literally fed on me for 2 nights, drifted 10 yards away, picked up a PVA bag, got nailed, and the rest is history. I didn't think like that at the time. I was just buzzing to see it, but I'm pretty sure that's what had happened. And anyway,
you start piecing it together.
Yeah, because I never had another bleed. The liner stopped once that brute was in the sack. My liner stopped at that moment. Anyway, that made my year, to be honest. Just seeing it there that year, like that, like it was my last trip of the year. It was like, and to see it was just such a buzz, massive fish. So that was it. That was my first year on Pingewood. As I say, pulled off for the winter. Now the next spring, I came back, and the next spring I came back, and I left it a bit later. The previous year I'd started in February, but judging by nothing really got caught till April. This year I thought, fuck starting in February. Excuse my language. I thought starting in February. I'll come back in April when it's going off. So that's what I did. Come back in April. And again, had a really pretty good spring. Caught a few that spring. I can remember I caught one they call floppy tail, which is a stocky, but it's now the one everyone goes there for. It's like a mid-40 now, mega looking fish. It was just under £30 then, a couple of ounces under 30.
Right.
Probably be 50 soon enough. It's mad how they grow in it. But I caught that. I caught the birthmark common. I caught a couple of other nice ones, white tips. Again though, I was still just a weekender really, and I was just flitting around the pond fishing for bites. Now, the main thing I remember about that spring is I'd got pally with Oz Holness. That spring he'd started fishing there. This was when he told me the Burfield stories, which I mentioned in the first podcast, but I'd got pally with Oz. Now, Oz actually went on to catch the brute that spring. I can remember being opposite when he had the bite, and when he had the bite, we all knew what he'd got. And Oz's capture of it taught me a lot about that fish and about big carp angling. He had just pretty much done loads of time that spring. Now Oz is a fucking good angler, but he pretty much just sat in the lawn 4 nights a week, fishing to the middle of the pond. Now, to begin with, I was sort of running rings around him, catching a few, thinking, what's he doing? You know what I mean? Why is he sat there? As I say, although I know I hadn't quite clicked, you know what I mean, at the time. I was like, why is he just sat there blanking? He did catch a couple of small commons, but anyway, he caught the brute on the flipping May full moon. Yeah, it was the May full moon. He caught the brute on the May full moon, bang on it. And, as I say, I got to know Oz a bit, and it sort of then dawned on me once he caught the brute that, what he was doing there, how he was specifically targeting that fish. Don't get me wrong, dropping around the pond in these little bays, etc. in the spring was good for bites, but not for the brute, and Oz knew that. He had just baited the middle of the pond with fish meals, doing 3-4 nights a week in pole position, just baiting and waiting, and fair play to him. He was seeing fish elsewhere and just sitting it out, just waiting for the brute, and it bloody turned up. And that, like I say, that taught me a lot about that lake, that fish, and how singling out them big uns, obviously, sometimes it takes a slightly different approach than just catching fish. I mean, don't get me wrong, you could catch the brute dotting around the pond fishing for bites, but that's more so going to potentially happen in the summer once the weed comes up.
More luck than judgment.
Yeah, like, you know, the majority of the brutes captures generally, especially early on, came from that middle of the pond. So, to be honest, when Aussie's capture, that was the end of the spring for me on there, to be honest. I'd gone back there for the spring, I was keen as fuck, but just before I was caught it, or just after I was caught it, I did my next couple of trips on Flint because, I don't know why, I just wanted to, I think I had a couple of socials over there with Oz and my mate Billy. But in that time, I got offered a ticket on a Mia up north. Again, I mentioned it in the previous podcast, number 1, I think. Did really well up there, but it was a lake that I'd wanted to fish for years. This Mia was. It was taking me back up north, but although I'd sort of was like, in my mind halfway through Pingewood and just sort of getting the swing of it, this was dead man's shoes, this syndicate, and I was going to turn this ticket down. Like, this was it. Like, my opportunity was here. I'd been desperate to fish it for years. It had a traditional close season on it, so it all just worked out perfectly. Like, I had caught the brute, pulled off when I got my ticket for this other lake. June the 16th come round, and I'm gunning for this Mia. Like Pingewood was not forgot about. You know, I never forget. You know, it was never forgot about. It was always that niggle there, but it got pushed to the wayside. And then, as it happens, Burfield then came up. Again, similar circumstances, just came out the blue, Burfield. I wasn't really planning it, and then all of a sudden I've been offered a ticket, and I was like, I've got to go for it. Like that was where my heart was telling me I needed to take that opportunity now to take that ticket while the opportunity's there, shall I say. So yeah, I took my Burfield ticket and started on there. But yeah, as I say, so a couple of years had now passed since I've been to Pingewood. But it was always that niggle in the back of my mind. Like I say, every other lake I've ever been to up until this point, whatever I'd wanted to catch in a sense, like the fish that had brought me there, I'd always caught them, but I hadn't caught the brute. So it was always like, there was unfinished business definitely at Pingewood, without doubt. And also, a lot of my mates were still fishing there. I'm still fishing Burfield. I'm still in the area, obviously, because Burfield and Pingewood are only, half a mile apart. So I'm still in the area. I'm still super in touch with Pingewood. All my mates are still fishing there. I'm seeing now more and more captures of the brute. And I'd sort of pieced together how I could catch that fish. I'd sort of worked out a plan on how I could potentially catch it. And I was just sort of waiting for that opportunity, and I didn't know when that opportunity would be because of Burfield, and that could have been, I didn't know how long that was going to take me. But as it happens, I had an all right first year on Burfield. It started well, was bloody rock hard in the middle, and I really sort of struggled, and then had a good autumn, which sort of made the year. The second year, on the other hand, was super hard, and I had a lot of heartache, a lot of headache, and I just, after a bit of a nightmare, again, it's in the first podcast, but basically I just threw the towel in. Not threw the towel in completely. I sort of knew what I was doing. I had this plan, but I was almost looking for an excuse to go back to Pingewood, and this nightmare I'd had on my second year in Burfield was the excuse that I bloody needed. Burfield was hard work, a lot of walking involved, a lot of the time for no reward, a lot of walking, like the paths was savagely overgrown, a lot of them, just getting your kit round was an headache. I needed a break, and Pingewood was the break that I needed. That week, I've gone and bought my Pingewood ticket back, and this was 2013 now. So about 3 or 4 years down the line from when I'd last fished it. No. What year was that? 2015 now. Yeah, 2015, and I'd last fished it in 2012, I think. Or again, there's people probably thinking, your dates are all wrong, but sorry, I do apologise. I'm terrible with dates. So I'm back on Pingewood. I bought my ticket back that week. Gone there on the Thursday. Now, bear in mind, where I fished it the previous 2 springs, it was super busy. So busy, I couldn't even get a bloody swim half the time. But now, in the year since, things had changed slightly. The Brute hadn't quite done the weights that it had used to do. It had sort of peaked. Now it was not dwindling, but it was an upper 40 now, which I know is still a massive fish, but it doesn't quite bring the same crowds as a 50-pounder does. A few of the lads that was doing time on there that was publicising it, writing about it in the mags, weren't fishing there anymore, so it wasn't getting the publicity anymore, and that had a knock-on effect. Basically, the lake was... Put it this way, I turned up that Thursday, my first trip back in July, the first trip back to that lake for 3 or 4 years, and I was the only one on. I've gone from struggling to get a swim to all of a sudden, 2015, the summer 2015, I've turned up on a Thursday and I was the only person there. All my mates that had been doing time, etc., weren't doing any time. It just screamed the perfect opportunity. A lot of my mates that was doing time on there had pulled off for one thing and another. And I just saw the opportunity. I was like, no one's fishing Pinge. No one that I knew. It's quiet. Oh, right, anyway, so I got my ticket, got there. Lake was empty. And I walked around, did a couple of laps that Thursday afternoon, and seen a few show. So all of a sudden, I've gone from Burfield, where I'd fished hard all spring. I had caught 2, but those both repeats. Done a hell of a lot of graft. Bloody so much walking, just hard work. Burfield is hard work. And all of a sudden, I'm on Pingewood. And Pingewood, in comparison, felt like a walk in the bloody park. I had a couple of gentle, leisurely strolls around the lake that afternoon, saw a few show, and I was like, this is what I needed. This is the break I needed. In fact, I was torn on where to set up, but I actually ended up setting up in the Nettles because I'd seen one show in the Nettles, and that was an area that I knew was pretty good for the Brute this time of the year. But like I say, I'd sort of had this plan. And my plan was I just needed to use some time, get in a good zone, middle of the pond, and I was going to fill it in and just sit there and fucking wait for the Brute to turn up. Like, that was my plan. I just needed to sort of work out what swim I was going to do it in. So that first trip, I was just looking for, where to fit. I just wanted a bite, to be honest. Like, I had a hard time that spring over. Yeah. So to begin with, I just wanted a bite. So I've dropped in the Nettles, got the rods out, and bloody, it's a funny one actually. My mate come down to see me, my mate Benji. He'd been to bait a lake over in the Colne Valley, and he drove across to me, and he didn't get there till gone midnight. And just as he walked in the swim, the bloody middle rod just absolutely melted off. My first night back on the lake. It was only a little cricket back common, mid-upper double. But it's just like a breath of fresh air. I'm back on Pingewood, first night, got the lake to myself, got one in the net. Happy days. What more could you ask for? Next day, massive easterly was forecast. Now, that blew up the gravel workings end. Now, in my mind, that wasn't Brute territory, and it has get caught there. It does get caught there. It did, bless it. It did occasionally get caught there, but it didn't fit in with my plan, if you know what I mean. It wasn't really the zone that I had in mind. But it was my first trip back, and I just had to... I couldn't not ignore this easterly. I know Pingewood, and I know how they react to them winds. Like, it funnels them up to that gravel workings end. And I just had to bloody go and I just wanted a bite, I'll be honest. I just wanted a bite. So anyway, I've moved up, flew up that end on the Friday before everyone else turned up. Set up in absolute pole position in the gravelies. Easterlies picked up, found a lovely spot in front that actually I'd fished years before, when I'd popped my marker up on it, chucked 3 inches round the float, piled about 4 key of boilie on the float, and I had 3 fish that night. Nothing amazing. The biggest was a mid-20 common, the other 2, I think 2 20-pound commons and a smaller one. But I'm buzzing. 2 nights back on Pingewood, I've already had 4. Like, I've bloody slugged it out on Burfield. Like, literally, I ain't exaggerating. I'm just thinking, this was literally a walk in the park. Like, that's how I was thinking, yeah, this is a walk in the park compared to that place. Anyway, so... I'm buzzing. I've had them 3 bites. That day, the winds died down. Although I've had 3 bites, I knew what they're like and how they just drift off out that end. There's a lot of pressure around me now for anglers fishing either side, and I had quite a bit of bait with me. So my last night, I moved into Motorway Point. Now, Motorway Point screamed the Brute to me. My mate Billy had caught it from there the previous summer, and we were coming up to that time that he'd sort of caught it. So you get a lot of weed come up in front of Motorway Point around July, August time, and it's pole position that time. I just, this is all stuff I'd picked up in them previous years, like just by staying in touch with the lake. So I dropped in Motorway Point, moved around and dropped in Motorway Point for my last night, and found a lovely spot at about 80 yards. It was 20 and a half wraps. It was quite weedy out there, but I found a lovely spot, fished it, didn't catch anything, put the rest of my bait, big bucket of bait on when I left. That's it. Left, and that was it. That was sort of getting the ball rolling as such. The following week, I don't know why, but I didn't go straight back in Motorway Point. I don't know if the weather didn't look massively favourable for it or what. But I went back in the Nettles because I knew that was a good zone for it, and I'd caught that one small coming from there the week before. But anyway, I can remember dropping on the Thursday night back in the Nettles, getting the rods out, nothing happened, and in the morning, the wind was blowing, a westerly picked up, and in the waves out in the middle, I bloody Sid one show, and I sort of thought, that ain't far from where I put that bait, on Motorway Point. It's a Friday morning, I thought, I've got to get round there, so I flew round onto Motorway Point, set up on there, got the rods out, and then, got the rods out, went out with relatively ease, got banging drops out there where I'd put the bait. You know when you do sort of thing, feels clean out there, it does feel good. Next morning I woke up, didn't see anything first thing anyway. I've gone into the bushes behind to answer a call of nature, as you do. And just as I'm there in the bushes, sort of 30 yards behind the back of the swim, I just heard, I've got my clutches are locked up, I'm fishing out in the pond, it's quite weedy, I'm fishing 80 yards out there. I thought, that sounds like my Neville. I thought, oh shit, quickly pull my trousers up, just sort of run back to the swim. Right hand rod's bloody away, up tight, bloody just ticking off a tight clutch. Ticked. I was like, oh fucking hell, pick the rod up. It was already well in the weed. Even though I was only yards away, in that sort of 10-second delay was 10 seconds too long. And cut a long story, I lost it. Up came back a bit opened out. They were some hooks I was actually testing at the time. They're actually on sale now, I won't mention them. They're not of any brand that I use now, but I won't mention what hooks they was, but it opened out. I thought, oh, fucking great. Got the rod back out again, and later that morning I had cricket back common, little cricket back common, up a double, but still, 2 bites in the morning off from Pingewood, off my baited zone. All of a sudden, like I said, the ball is rolling now. Anyway, I've gone into that last night of my 3-nighter. Oh no, I've missed one there. I had another bite that day. I can remember, I've had a bite. My mate Nathan stood in the swim, and I've had another bite. And I can remember as I bloody picked the rod up, this fish has just launched out the water in the middle of the pond. Like a bloody salmon, like literally attached to my rig. Anyway, I got that one in, and it was the one they called the Baby Lynn. Absolute mega looking old carp. And so, started off with a bit of a sour taste in my mouth that morning. I'd lost one in the weed, but I'd had 2 more bites. Nothing massive. The Baby Lynn was a mid-20, and I'd had an upper double, low 20 sort of cricket back common type thing. But I'd caught a couple. They was off the baited spot. They sort of, overshadowed the one I'd lost. Happy days. Put the bait out for that last night, and you know what it's like then. You're going into that last night full of confidence, ain't you? And the next morning turned into a bit of a disaster. Really, they were obviously out there first thing. I could see bits of bubbling. I was getting the odd line out. Anyway, I've had the first bite. Blatantly a big fish, got it most of the way back through the weed, and just in the deep water in front of the point, the hook just pulled, and I was like, no. It was obviously a good fish. I'd had 2 fish the day before that was both not very big, and this was noticeably a bigger fish. Pingewood had a lot of big fish in it, really. I was like, no. Got the rod back out. A few hours later that morning, I've had another bite. And I know, it's easy to say, but I'll tell you what, this was another big fish. Like, it's hit the surface above the spot, and it's just started kiting hard left. I could just see it, this big, sort of steely blue, grey shape, kiting left just under the surface. Bow waving as it did so, and it's just swinging hard left. So much so, if anyone knows Motorway Point, there's a buoy just out to your left, and it just went beyond the back of the buoy on the surface. Like, my line luckily was above the buoy, but it just kited right round behind the buoy, swang I could see this was a bit. I could see it. I couldn't see what it was. It was bloody 80 yards out in the pond. But with the way the sun was, the ripple, it was so close to the surface, I could just see this big steely blue shape, bow waving left to right. and it's got hard down to my left, like extreme left, and I'm sort of giving it the butt down to the left. It's down in front of the swim next door, and it's just hook pulled again. And I'll just chuck the rod in the lake. I'd actually forgot about that. A mate of mine told me about that a few weeks ago. But yeah, I just chucked the rod in the lake and fucking walked off. One of them, like, yeah. If I lose 3 fish in a season, I ain't happy. And that trip, I'd lost 3 in 2 mornings. Like, I was
on a lake like that.
Yeah, and 2 of them were good uns. The brute was due out. I mean, there's a slim chance. But to be honest, I did think there was a slim chance one of them could have been the brute, but I was pretty sure. I was like, nah, you haven't lost the brute. I just told myself I hadn't lost it. I'd obviously lost 1 or 2 of the good ones that morning, but yeah, I hadn't lost the brute. That's what I told myself. And one thing I did notice though about those losses, there was a lot of eelgrass in that lake at the time, and both the fish I lost that morning, I had eelgrass wrapped that tightly around my hook link. It had like wrapped in a tight little ball, and that ball of eelgrass had like slid down onto the hook.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that was why I lost these fish to hook pulls. Something to do with this eelgrass, the way it was wrapping around the hook link. But anyway, never mind. That was my explanation for why I lost her anyway. Yeah, like I say, I'm not going to lie, I left that lake with a real sour taste in my mouth that trip. I had caught the baby ling and a little common, but I had no doubt in my mind that I'd lost some, at least 1, if not 2 fish that I really didn't want to lose. Anyway, but that, as I say, that got the ball rolling, and my brute plan was now in effect. So that's what I just carried on doing that for the next few weeks, 3 nights a week. I was sitting in the point. And to be honest, after that first initial hit, not a lot happened. In fact, nothing happened. It went very quiet. My mate Sam had now started doing the same. My mate Sam had come back and he was fishing opposite, doing the same in the slipway. And he was baiting heavy as well. And then I can just remember it was very quiet for a few weeks. And then all of a sudden, the one trip, it was just noticeably obvious that they were more over Sam's side. And I won't go into too much detail, but basically Sam had a couple of bites that trip. He had the birthmark coming, and then on the Sunday morning, while we were all sat in his swim actually, he caught the brute. Now, Sam's a bloody good mate. He'd fished that lake for 5 years. To be sat in his swim when he had the bite with a few of our other mates, the banter was flowing beforehand. It was epic. I was so glad I was there. As much as I wanted to catch the brute, I was buzzing for Sam at that moment. And yeah, mega, he caught it. Fucking happy days on the Sunday, and that sort of was like, well, I ain't going to catch it for a few weeks now, I was thinking that it was a few days after the full moon, that was, and I sort of thought, well, I'm going to have to wait until at least the next full moon now for my chance, but didn't matter. So yeah, Sam had caught the brute, and so what I actually did that following Thursday, I cancelled my day's holiday because I only get 20 days holiday a year. They're precious to me. So I thought, well, the brute's just been out. The chances of me catching it now is slim to none, so I'm cancelling that Friday. So I did. I cancelled that Friday. But the problem with doing that was when I got down there on the Friday, I'd missed out on the point. There was a chap called Old Boy, called Ron on there. That I know, lovely old boy. Luckily, he couldn't even cast as far as my spot, so I knew the spot wasn't getting fished that weekend, but Ron was on there. And I can remember I ended up on the cottage bank somewhere, and I could just see that fish, that time of the year, a lot of them spend a lot of the days out there in the middle in the weed, backs out the water, and I could just see there was a lot more activity starting to go on. More my side of the lake again, more that motorway point side. And obviously I couldn't get in there, Ron was in there, but on the Sunday I went round there, put the rest of my bait back out in the point, knowing that the next weekend was the new moon weekend. I had 3 nights again, and I just thought, right, I'll just get the ball start rolling again the following weekend. So yeah, got back down there the following Thursday, back in the point again, happy days, got the rods out. And I just remember that Thursday, not long after getting the rods out, I could just feel I was coming down with a bloody, you can just feel it in your throat and your nose, can't you? And basically, mate, I come down with an absolute death flu. Like, it was a good job that I'd got my bait and rods out on that Thursday before, because to this day now, I can't remember. I've never been that ill. I was so ill. I spent 3 days lay on motorway point, just dying in my bed. I just so ill. I hardly got out of the bag for 3 days. The only time I got out was on the second morning. I had a bloody bream bite. Oh, that was it. On the second day, I decided. Oh yeah, there's something else I missed actually. So this trip, I'll have to just backtrack a second here.
That's right.
What I'd also done this trip, we'd all been baiting with boilies, or me and Sam had. We'd just been baiting really heavy with boilies. Sam had obviously caught the brute, just baiting really heavy with boilies. I'd had a few, but it had gone quiet for a few weeks. But now my mate Nath was also baiting on the cottage bank out long with loads of boilies. So for the previous few weeks, she'd had 3 of us all baiting lung out to the middle. We just shit loads of boilies. At the beginning, it seemed to work, but all of a sudden, it had gone very dry. No one was catching fuck all, although the fish was obviously out there. So that week, I thought, I'm going to take a bucket of Emperor as well. Just one of them things. I just thought, something a bit different. So I've turned up there that Thursday, put my bucket of Emp out there, put my boilies out there as well. And prior to that, I was fishing pop-ups, but this trip, I thought, I'm going to fish 2 D-rigs. And as I'm fishing 2 D-rigs on the deck, I put one on a boilie up bait and then just one on my old faithful little balanced tiger knot. I didn't even put any tigers out there. I just put a bucket of Emp, load of boilies, and I just had a balanced tiger on one rod. I don't even know why I did it. It was just an alternative. You can't beat a little single tiger over that kind of particle fishing. It's like my ultimate confidence hook bait, and I just put it out there. On the second morning, I can remember lying there like death warmed up in bed, and I've had a bite off a bloody bream on that single tiger knot. It was the first bite I've had off that spot for like weeks now, about 3 or 4 weeks. And I can remember I've got it in, and I've pulled the hook out, my sharpened hook. Do you know when the hook point's literally bent over, like it was bird over? And mate, as I say, I was feeling so ill. I literally pushed this bird hook against the bars on my bivvy, straightened it out, looked at it, it was still sharp as fuck. So I bent the point back into shape on the bivvy, looked at it, I thought, yeah, that's fucking sharp. That'll do. Mate, I'd never normally do that, but as I say, I'm dying here. The last thing I wanted to do was start tying new rigs and that. I've literally done that, wrapped it back up, wanked it back out there, got back in the bag, that'll do, you know what I mean? I'm literally lying there, dying. As I say, I'm so ill. And all weekend I'd lay there just sort of praying for the brute. I can remember, I was so ill, I was just thinking, oh, please feel sorry for me. It was only 2 weeks, it wasn't even 2 weeks hardly since my mate Sam had caught it. I wasn't expecting it. But I was sort of lay there praying for it. And then on the final morning, the Sunday morning, just at first light, I had another bream bite on that same tiger nut. And I re-wrapped it up. And just as I chucked it, as I was wrapping it up, I can remember my mate Billy walking into the swim. He was just on an early morning walk, and I've chucked the rod back out there and first cast, it was just perfect line, perfect drop. I can remember just turning around to Billy as he walked in the back. I was like, mate, that's the one. Sank it, didn't think too much of it. I had a tea with Billy, he's gone. About 8 o'clock, 8:30, I'm sat there on the bed. Not a lot had been happening that weekend, really. I hadn't really seen any shows. I'd not really seen anything over the spot to say they were definitely on me. I'd had 2 bream bites. But I can remember I'm sat on the bed to my mate Mitch, who I was talking about in the Dorchester one. I'm sat on my bed chatting to Mitch. And all of a sudden, I'm looking, I'm on the phone looking out at the spot. And by now, there's a lot of surface weed out there. You literally had... My spot was a hole in the surface weed the size of like a bivvy, and then you had a channel for about 60 yards of weed leading to it, and then it was a bit more open water in front of me. And everything else was surface weed, so you basically had a channel leading out there to my spot. And I can remember looking out there at my spot, like this hole in the weed, and this cooch just come swimming across the surface weed as they do. You'd swim across the surface weed, come across the spot, drop down, pick up a bait, swim back onto the weed. And it's come across the spot, and as it's come off the surface weed and come onto the spot, I can just remember this coot look down, and I have never, still to this day, seen a coot spook quite like that one did. It literally backflipped back onto the weed. It was so panicked, its legs and its wings were going everywhere. It was in a right fluster. And I was on the phone to Mitch, and I was just I can remember saying, fucking hell, I was like, mate, you want to just see how this coot has just spooked off my spot? I was like, there's got to be something out there. And I can remember Mitch saying, maybe it's the brute, like just, you know, like, didn't think much of it. Anyway, chatted away for 5 minutes, put the phone down. Now, as soon as I put the phone down to him, mate, left-hand rod, whacked up tight, line cut up. I knew it was a carp bite. Anyway, I picked the rod up, clutch is already locked up, and it's just straight away plugged me in the wall of weed that's at the back of the spot. So I've give it the absolute butt, and I'm just slowly walking back up the point, just slowly walking back, and it's got to that point, you know, when it gets to that point, you think, oh, I can't give this any more, but I'm just going to hold it there, like, and I hold it for a bit, and then all of a sudden it's just started to give, and I'll give it a bit more, and it's just started to get, and then it's moving, and I'm literally slowly, inch by inch, I am just dragging like a car-sized weed bed from 80 yards out in the pond back towards motorway point, inch by inch. From that initial take, I never felt another kick on the line. I was just praying, I was thinking, please be on, please be on, please be on. You know what it's like. Yeah. Anyway, if anyone that knows Pingewood and knows motorway point, it drops straight down in front of the point, straight into about 10, 12 foot of water. It's really deep off the point, and it's gin clear, absolute gin clear. Weed-free water, because it drops down so deep and silty. That's the only weed-free bit, and then as you get further out, it comes up shallow and goes really weedy. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I've inched this car-sized weed bed back, and then I can just remember, as it's got close and it's come over that deep water, I could see below the weed, under the water, and I could just see this big orangey tail. Now, one thing, the brute, when Sam had caught it 2 weeks before, it had a bit of tail damage. It's getting old, you know what I mean? It's an old fish, and its tail was it had a bit of like white deady skin on the bottom of its tail, and it was a bit sore, obviously, where it had been rubbing on the gravel or something when it had been saying the sand. I don't know, but its tail was a bit sore on the bottom. So recognisable, and I just can remember just seeing this massive weed bed inching in, and I sort of got at the right angle in this deep water that I could see below the weed, and I could just see the brute's tail hanging out the bottom of the fucking weed bed. That's all I could see, just its tail hanging out the bottom sort of back end of the weed bed. I thought, oh my God, it's the fucking brute. And I've just got it then few inches closer. I've got the net, and like the momentum of the weed. By this point, it's such a big weed bed, mate. I just couldn't get that in the net. Mm-hmm. Like it's so big. The momentum of it now is just carrying it and the brute towards me. So I've just had to like give it. I've like, literally pushed the rod to one side. I've grabbed the net with both hands, both arms of the net, and I have just gone as deep as I could with this net. I could see its tail, so I just had to go below that. I just shoved the net down below all the weed, and just both arms, I just lifted the bastard up, like, and I just had like a car-sized bit of weed, sat on top of the net with what I hoped was the brute plugged in the bottom. Yeah. Like, I could see his tail, so I knew that how far. And yeah, luckily I've dragged it back to the bank, pulled all the weed apart, and lo and behold, there it was, the fucking brute. Can you believe it? So yeah, mega buzz that was. It was a bit of a mad one as well, because like when I'd sort of left Burfield, I said this in the first podcast, but I will just briefly cover it again. When I'd left Burfield, I always, in my mind, I left at the end of June. Like my first trip to Pingewood was the first weekend in July, but in my mind, I wanted to be back on Burfield by the first weekend in September at the very latest, because the year before I'd done well in that period and I didn't want to miss it. So basically, that had given me 8 weeks on Pingewood, and I actually caught the brute on the 7th trip, like the 7th weekend. So yeah, it couldn't have panned out any better. Rang a few of my mates, weighed it at 47 £. Absolute mega buzz, and that was it. That's how I caught the brute.
Unbelievable, brilliant. Just obviously from speaking to you on these podcasts, it's become sort of evident how things seem to pan out with timing.
No,
it's chance or what.
But I must say, I've had
once.
Yeah, it has happened, and a few of my mates always say this to me, and I can only put it down to luck, mate. Yeah. I have had it happen a few times where I've caught fish just at that last moment, or just when I mean, even with the Burfield comment in hindsight, like a lot of things started to go against me towards the end. I'd had it good, with that lake. I'd had it good in the previous years. It'd been quiet. I'd been able to do my own thing, and then all of a sudden, Scott had caught it at £62. The lake got a lot more interest. It got a lot busier, and I could tell that it wasn't the lake I'd fished in the previous years. It was starting to do my head in, to the point that how busy it is now. If I hadn't caught that common by now, I probably wouldn't still be there. Well, I probably would.
Yeah.
It's easy to say that. I probably would.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have been it'd have been pissing me off, really.
Yeah.
And I say, in hindsight, I caught that just in time, really. I couldn't have asked for a better time to catch it. But all I can put that down to, mate, is bloody luck.
Yeah. But it's clear as well from listening to you, obviously the amount of effort you put in. I mean, everywhere's a bit of a trek away to start with, and it's all those little extra percentages, isn't there, that we always talk about.
Yeah, that's it.
Just stacking up, which, you can call it luck, where you can sort of, it's almost putting luck on your side.
Well, that's it. You stack all the odds in your favour, don't you? You do everything you can, all them little percentages that ultimately stack the odds in your favour.
Like the harder you work, the luckier you become.
That's it, I suppose. Effort equals reward, and I always stand by that, you know what I mean? Even if sometimes it doesn't feel like it's going your way, I'm sure at some point it will. I always just think, just keep at it, keep slogging it out, because that has happened to me so many times where I've been down in the dumps and really thought, this ain't happening. And ultimately, it always pans out well in the end. So, never give up. That's my key. That's my biggest tip.
And that goes well to answering that question we asked on the other podcast, wasn't it, about the attributes. That consistency and just almost bloody minding it. That's it. It's like a piece of the puzzle each time, isn't it? I suppose it's you're experienced enough now to know that those bad things happen.
They do.
They're going to come.
They're going to come. Exactly that, mate.
React.
Exactly that. Like I say, as I say, I always say, it always pans out well in the end. You just got to stick at it.
It's how you react to it rather than we all get the shitty circumstances in fishing in life. It's it's how you deal with them, isn't it?
It is. That's it.
Move on. I
think that's the wind picking up now, isn't it?
That has picked up quite a bit, hasn't it? Actually?
It has. There's a bit of a chill in the air now, isn't there?
Yeah. When's it due to swing? So what are we on now? Saturday? Is it tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow it goes back to Saturday. Tomorrow day, I think it ends up by tomorrow evening. It's going to be southwesterly, isn't it? Which will look good. It's mild as well, but typically that's Sunday and I've got to go home.
Go back to work.
But never mind. I mean, we've had good weather this winter, really, haven't we? We can't complain.
So we've had a handful of frost, and that's it, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is but I don't know. I mean, it's the years are going on. It seems to be. I don't know. We get like a little. We
just don't get winter.
We get like a mini winter. Towards the end of winter.
A month or so of it, and then winter gets shorter and shorter every year. Not that I'm complaining.
No, it can be a bit grim, can't it, when you're sat out behind motion. I mean, do you ever sort of, obviously, because you tend to fish the harder waters, when you're struggling, do you ever sort of go somewhere for a quick bite?
Not really. Not as such a quick bite. I've got a ticket for a park lake local to me. Like Himley Hall, which I've had a ticket for years. Again, I mentioned it in the first podcast. It's the only real lake worth fishing around by me. And it's got a great stock of fish. Not the easiest lake in the world. I mean, I'm sure there's probably a lot of people that are listening to this that find Himley quite tricky, but it's local, and I always keep my ticket because when it gets to that real grim period in the winter, I mean, normally it's now, but as it happens, it's not. It's good weather. I've been seeing odd signs the last few weeks. I'm keen to stick it out here. But you always get that point, usually January, February, it's bastard freezing. And, as much as, like, deep down I know it's almost pointless going, I still go because I love it, but it's pointless driving 120 miles when you know almost that nothing's going to happen. I might as well stay local to home and fish local. There's some lovely fish in that lake, and I've just got much more chance of a bite. But
and I suppose as well, on that note, you're coming back with a bit of a fresh head.
For
prime time. It just starts to.
I've done that many a times. I'd be surprised if I sit on here, to be honest, all the way through till April, because that break. I always usually have a break of at least a month or two at some point in the winter, and when you come back, you are super keen.
You sort through all your kit.
If you've slogged it out consistently, you find your kit's all battered. You're almost. I wouldn't say burnt out before you started, because I never get burnt out. That just doesn't come into my vocabulary. But you can almost be a little bit deflated before, you know. It's nice to come back with a fresh head. You're keen, ain't you? Like you say, you've sorted all your kit out.
It's at that prime time.
Yeah. It's
weights.
exciting. It's an exciting thing to do. Like
it's like starting again, like a little reset.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, get everything refreshy, spooled up.
That's it.
Yeah, knowing you that first session back where you know you've gone through your bag and your box, everything's new, all set. Yeah, new line on the reels.
Yeah, it's always an exciting time of the year, and it's spring.
And you cast and have a frap up, first or second cast. Here we go. I'm back.
Here we go again.
Awesome, mate. Right, I think if we wrap it then, but obviously just a quick thank you to you and to all the great feedback both you and I have had after releasing the Burfield episode.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, mate. And as you say, I've had, we've both had some great feedback. It's been quite humbling, actually. To be honest, I was a bit shy about doing it at first, and I'm quite shocked at how many people enjoyed it, really.
Yeah, well, I've had several messages that have said, and this isn't blowing my own trumpet because you've done all the work, I haven't really done anything. So that's the best, not just podcast, but the best interview they've had. Like how inspirational it was from some big names as well. In the industry.
I say I've had a few messages.
Nice
it is. It's quite,
Yeah, brilliant.
It's blowing me away, really.
Yeah, no, same, mate. So thank you for that. And just for everyone who's listening, if you get a moment, please leave us a quick review on the iTunes store, because we really appreciate that. If you love listening to Tom, thank you. So we'll wrap it up there. Tom, thank you again, mate.
Yeah, no worries. Take care, everyone, and be lucky.